A very good evening to you. It is the 27th day of the month of May, the year 2021. And one more time we gather here on Powerbrief to look into analysis of the African social-political situation. Tonight we're joined by Mr. Philemon Samoei. Mr. Philemon Samoei is a peace and security and safety consultant. He is joined by Mr. Irungu Goko, who is a policy and public consultant. My name is Cornelius Omuse, and I welcome you into this discussion tonight as we look into the 5 regions of Africa, that is the northern part, the southern part, the eastern part, the western part of Africa, and the central part of Africa. We will look into the land question in South Africa and also the situation, the peace situation in the western part of Africa, and issues to do with the term of governance in the African continent. This conversation is also live on our Facebook page, that is CAC TV Kenya. YouTube channel is CAC TV Kenya, and you can also engage us on our SMS number, which is 22167. Keep it here till the end. Gentlemen, welcome to Powerbrief tonight.
Thank you.
It's been long, Mr. Samoei, since we are here on another show. Mr. Irungu, it is your first time to be here. Feel much more welcomed tonight as we look into the African situation. And just maybe to begin here from home, today we had the 18th National Prayer Breakfast, where the head of state led the country. Other leaders had different issues to say. And just briefly from you and also from Mr. Samoei, the leaders said a lot, good things. But on the streets, you could hear the murmurs that if they only kept their word and practiced what they were saying, then the country could really achieve what the leaders are desiring that the country achieves. What could be hindering the country to achieve such?
Thanks a lot, Cornelius. Let me say thanks again to our viewers for this opportunity to share and discuss. As in public policy and governance, we say it's not engineering, it's not mathematics. So the formula of public policy is conversation. The problem is that in Africa we like talking. Our history and how we were raised up and how kids were taught was through storytelling. I think we've not gotten over the concept of storytelling. We like talking a lot. We like talking and talking and talking and talking. And the moment the former president, Mzee Kibaki, was a man who told us, talk less, do more. The only thing about what the politicians say is they say for the moment. They say for the camera. You know, it's all about who's watching, what is the event, and they have mastered that art. I call it politics of hypocrisy. That's what is
Thank you, Mr. Irungu is talking about the politicians. But Mr. Samoei, how about the citizens themselves? Are they clean when it comes to these matters that they say, if we meant what we speak?
Thank you, Cornelius, and good evening, our viewers. Let me take this opportunity to say thank you so much for hosting me this evening, so that we dissect on these issues affecting our continent, Africa, and as we cascade down to our beloved country, Kenya, where you've asked us about whether the politicians are talking the talk. And more specifically today, when we had the prayer breakfast, national prayer breakfast. Now, I was keenly following that conversation, and from where I sit as a Christian, there is this narrative where we say we must walk our talk. As my brother Irungu has just said, there is too much of talk in our country today, and by extension other countries in Africa, that we are not actually doing what is expected of us as leaders. And therefore, it's hypocrisy of the highest order, for lack of a better word, that when it comes to a scheduled event like this one, of the National Prayer Breakfast, it appears so, just in quotes, that leaders appear to be now coming together and speaking and reading from the same script. Whereas when they step out of that prayer meeting, definitely see what is happening out there is that actually these people are not unified and they are not actually working together in the interest of serving the people of this republic.
Thank you,
so there is
Mr.
more that needs to be
Thank
done.
you, Mr. Samoei. Now, we board our planes to the Democratic Republic of Congo. We've been having some of these horrible videos coming from there, how women, men, and young children were rushing in the streets, running away from the volcanic eruption, those sides of Nyiragongo. And we've also seen yesterday Lake Kivu. There was a very big eruption. And this brings out some of these things that we used to learn while at primary school. I know you did JC, also Mr. Samoei did JC.
Absolutely.
For our case, we did something called social studies, which was combining geography, religious education, and everything.
Yeah.
Some of these things, we used to look at them as theories or something, zile hekaya. But now we've witnessed it during our lifetime. Two things came out here. One is how prepared are we when it comes to natural calamities, which you call an act of God, and two, how can we use some of these things to be as a blessing? Because if we prepare before, this thing happened before and it has repeated itself, how it happened the first time is the same way it has happened during the second time. What does it speak about Africa's preparedness when it comes to handling calamities and natural disasters?
Thanks a lot, Cornelius. When you look at the volcano in DRC, it's so unfortunate that the station, the scientist station that was stationed there for years to monitor the mountain has not been functioning for a year because the donor funding stopped. So the World Bank and the government of DRC did not fund. So when the World Bank stopped, why did the government stop? What really saddened me is the station lacked internet, a whole station of scientists lacking internet.
That's for 1 year.
Yes, until I think they said it resumed a few months ago. So when you look at it that way, it shows us how ignorant we are to calamities. When you look at even disasters, all over Africa, floods, they are very few. Floods, fire, accidents. Like the level of government involvement in it, nobody seems to look at it in that importance. When you look at a firefighter, if you tell a governor today in Kenya to buy a firefighter for every sub-county, they'll say it has no political mileage. But when fire breaks up, that's when you see voters saying, these people are not working. Congo should have looked at that scenario, like I had told you off camera, using the tourism eye. Invest money there. Fund, cause Congo is rich. Let the ministry, the involved ministry of mining, or is it environment, the involved department, let it get money. Let it project that in these days there might be a volcano. By now, that government should have moved those people, instead of settling them back, they should have moved them, then museum the whole mountain and make it a tourist destination for people to come and see volcano. And this mountain had a volcano in 2021. We read about volcanoes and we had never seen them. They would have documented the videos, put them. Look at what Rwanda did about the genocide. Today, everybody wants to go to Rwanda, and everyone visiting Rwanda today visits the genocide park. Yes, it gives bad memories of the war, but somebody learns something about it. Because history, we cannot, we cannot revert it. So Congo today if they are, if they are diplomatic enough, or if they are serious enough as a government, that could be a tourist site that would earn them a lot of money, including scholars, people moving from all over the world to go and study these stones that have erupted from this volcano. What does it hold as a scientist, as an archaeologist, as a, personally, like I said, if it's something they had predicted 3-4 years ago and told us to prepare to go and watch a volcano, most probably I'd have been interested to go and watch it. Because it's something that I learned in school, in GHC, in high school geography, today, it's something that you just hear. And somehow you've never thought it can be true. Then it happens in your lifetime. Now you saw the eclipse and all of us were out watching it. Because it's something that you just read, you're like, this could be a story. Then it happens.
Thank you, Mr. Irungu. Now, Mr. Samoei, as this happened, people had to jump over. That is at the border of the DRC and Rwanda. Now, here it brings out the issue of the plight of the refugees, because a lot of people are now wondering, when these people cross over to Rwanda, how is their safety? Who takes care of their daily needs? And after that, what will inform them going back? And even if they go back, now where do they go to get again where to live? Because when this thing erupts, it covers maybe even a village, covers houses. Now what now becomes next for these people who are affected by the calamity?
Well, it's unfortunate that Rwanda the
DRC.
Democratic Republic of Congo has had its fair share of problems, a litany of problems, so to speak, right from the conflict that started way back after the colonial period, and the outbreak of disease. I would say DRC has been the epicenter of most of these natural and man-made calamities. And therefore, with the presence even of the United Nations, spanning back into 1961, where there was the first deployment of peacekeeping troops in Africa, and that being the Democratic Republic of Congo. So we have a rich history about the engagements and the activities, from the United Nations, going by the charter that was done in 1945 following the Second World War, the end of the Second World War. And therefore, my expectation, and going also by the history that we have about Mount Nyarigongo, is that it has a history of numerous eruptions. From 1884, that is the first time we had an eruption on that mountain. And therefore, there has been a series of succeeding volcanic eruptions and volcanic activity. What does it mean for us as the African continent? It means that we need to learn our lessons based on incidents that happen, so that going forward, we are able to deal with those problems in a better way, in terms of emergency response, in terms of actually early warning and detection mechanisms, with experts manning those stations, so that in the event of these seismic activities just beneath the earth and probably possible eruptions and cracks, within the volcanic strata, then we are able to respond appropriately in a better way, okay? So that it's not just something that comes and explodes and gets most of the people in a flat foot kind of situation that they are not able to help themselves. And therefore, what we witnessed that day in Rwanda, just going by what you've said, is that our level of preparedness is still below. It's wanting. That really most of the African governments within the regions of the Democratic Republic of Congo and all these other regions need to upscale their level of preparedness. Now, the plight of refugees, I remember what happened is that there was no early warning and detection system, as my brother Irungu has said. because that night of Saturday, 22nd, people actually started smelling ash,
Heat, ash.
and you know, the toxic whatever emissions from the volcanic, you know, eruption. At that point, it had not erupted. So that, in fact, in my own opinion, is acted as the early or the warning system. That now people, women, children, and all those groups of people actually started evacuating by themselves. And there is a problem because even the infrastructure itself, from the point of the eruption across into Rwanda is a problem. I remember even some of the people who are fleeing from the volcanic eruption site actually were able to get an accident. Yeah, we lost other people on the process of trying to flee the volcanic eruption, and we could see women and children, you know, carrying their stuff on their heads. And what we are told even by UNICEF is that there are children who got lost and got detached from their, you know, parents, and they were actually being received across the other side of Rwanda. And looking at this, the Lake Kivu, which is along the border of Rwanda and the DRC, again is another issue because there is still that seismic activity beneath Lake Kivu, and about 15 or so volcanic sites which are still active and could pose a serious danger to the population living around that.
So from where we are, these things still calls for an immediate and urgent attention, both within DRC and external bodies, that is AU, the UN, and other players to come and rescue this country.
I will answer you in the affirmative that indeed much more needs to be done in terms of helping the DRC. Having had this history of these volcanic eruptions, what does it mean? It means that we need, in fact, to cordon off almost 100 kilometers around that Mount Nyarigongo, because it has had a series of these eruptions. And I remember the one in 2002 that killed almost 250 people, yeah, and displaced over 200,000 people. So you can imagine how these people will cross over. There are no refugee camps available. There are no tents. There is no clean drinking water for these people. And most probably, there could be an outbreak of diseases such as cholera, and these other waterborne diseases, and even malaria, because they're actually people who have migrated because as a result of an emergency.
Many thanks, Mr. Samoya. In all the policymakers, this show goes international, and they're watching the plight of the refugees and what is happening at the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, let's come back again in the East African community. A few days ago, we had President Suluhu Hassan coming to Kenya. It was a very colorful reception, all the talks that they had with the head of state of Kenya and all the discussions that they had. But again, we have a history of the East African community. You remember what made this body to break in the year 1977, especially the suspicion between Kenya and Tanzania that Kenya was benefiting more. And after some time, this community was revived. From where we are, still there is a feeling that especially Kenyans feel that as a country, our policies, our government has been so much lenient to the other partners, but the other partners are not lenient to us when it comes like somewhere anataka kuingiza mahindi yake Uganda, mambo ni tofauti. Lakini ya huko kuingia hapa ni rahisi, and other restrictions, things to do with business tariffs and everything. So from where we are with the Suluhu visit and the discussion that they had, and even President Uhuru having taken over as the chairman as we are speaking tonight, do you think the East African community is now going to have a new face, or this suspicion ni ile iko na msingi mkubwa sana that it cannot really get a solution? Basing on history.
Okay. History has had it that there have been an animosity between Kenya and Tanzania. And also we can say Kenya, Uganda sometimes, Kenya, Ethiopia, Kenya. So there's always that, which is very normal, because it's all about foreign policy interests, and you have to push what favors yours. The current status, I would say, when East Africa community that time was Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania.
3 countries.
Yes. Today we have Rwanda, Southern Sudan, Burundi, DRC wanted to join. So you're looking at 7 states. When you look at then, we didn't have the East Africa Legislative Assembly. Today we have it. Today we even have the East Africa Community flag. We have we have the East Africa anthem that is played in all national events across East Africa. So it means we are headed somewhere. What I agree with you is the late president for Tanzania may have had what we call a historical belief. Because in those 1970s, he was alive. He was in politics. He was practically involved in the Chama cha Mapinduzi politics. So he was part and parcel of that animosity. And sometimes they say in Kikuyu land, they say that you straighten a tree when it's young. So this guy could have been straightened that way then. Now when he gets to power, it's a business of reviving what he believed in EAC. That's why he had a lot of conflicts between Kenya and Tanzania on business matters. On business matters. He didn't have a problem of anything else. Why? Kenya is a mother of peace in East and Central Africa. And sometimes you will realize that we are not very fast to retaliate. We are not very fast to retaliate because the UN, the AU, looks up to us to provide peace base for East and Central Africa. When you look at the Somalia case, look at how we've been handling it diplomatically. Look at how we've handled the Ethiopia-Kenya cases. Look at even, the number of refugees we are hosting in Kenya today. So when you look at a Tanzanian hawking socks in Kenya, if you go to Tanzania, you'll find a Kenyan working in a hotel. The advantage of Kenya vis-a-vis Tanzania and other countries is we are economically strong than them. And the feeling that the current president, Madam Suluhu, has come to reality with. He said, I've come with solutions so that we can all be independent in our own unique dynamics, in our own unique way. When you look at Uganda and Kenya, look at the kind of business that we trade between us. Comfortably. Kenya and Rwanda. Rwanda economy was birthed by Kenya. To date, there are so many professionals working in Kagame's government. There are so many Kenyans doing business in Rwanda today. Comfortably. Nobody is asking us. If you go to DRC today, there are so many Kenyans doing business in DRC. Even in Tanzania, there are so many Kenyans farming in Tanzania. Farming in Tanzania. So the conflict of interest is very natural. How you handle it is what is now what brings the whole change all together. Because the way it was handled then, I remember it's Tanzania that pulled out. So you see, Kenya and Uganda could not remain a community because there cannot be a community of two nations. That is so. But now, when they revived it back, and they expanded the scope. So right now, what I can say is East Africa community is the next big thing in Africa. You can take it from me, it will swallow the whole of Central Africa.
Thank you, Mr. Irungu Goko. Before we go for a break, I would wish also to get from Mr. Samoei the issue of having a common currency. That is the East African community having a common currency, because a few days ago we were with some friends in Tanzania And having Kenyan money, you're being told end hapo badilishe kwanza, then it was a process going there, pesa zinaisha, or you're told to come the next morning so that the money could be exchanged. And there are people who are saying, can't we have this opportunity where as a community we have a common currency?
Thank you, Cornelius. And the reason why in the continent of Africa, most governments or most states have actually come together as economic blocks, right? Either economic blocks in terms of spurring the economy, or even in terms of managing conflicts, cross-border conflicts. And we have conflict systems as well. Within the Great Lakes region, we have the conflict system, like the West Africa has the ECOWAS, as we have IGAD as well. Those are conflict systems that we use to manage conflicts. So in my thinking, the East African community was well thought of because of that challenge where me as a Kenyan had to do so many things, which was so hectic for me to cross over into Tanzania to do business, or Uganda. The general feeling was that, in fact, initially there was the East African bloc community, where we even had the East African shilling as a common currency many years back. So it's not a new thing that we probably we are thinking about in terms of introducing it. So, well, in as much as we have individual issues as countries, then for me, I feel it's still important that we pull together as a region, as one of the regions that falls within the Great Lakes region, and also the Greater Horn of Africa, so that we are able to deal with our issues as a community.
Many thanks.
Thank you.
We take a quick commercial break. Tonight is one of the most special nights on this show because since its inception, we've never had an opportunity to do a social, political, and economic analysis of the African continent. And tonight, Mr. Irungu Goko, who is a public and a policy consultant, is joined by Mr. Philemon Samoe, who is a peace, security, and a safety consultant. Mr. Philemon Samoe is also a community worker and a gubernatorial candidate that is from Trans Nzoia County. Keep it here because we are coming back with more as we fly again to the western part of Africa, to southern part of Africa, briefly in the central part of Africa as we come to the end of our show. Keep it here on CAC TV. Are you looking to grow a business? CAC TV offers you a variety of advertising opportunities to suit your budget. Advertise with us today and reach your potential customers countrywide. For more information, email us on sales@cactv.org or call 0794 588 054.
Another year has come for us to celebrate the Women's Guild Week. PCA Women's Guild is a fellowship whose aim is to unite both girls and women in the dedication of their lives to the Lord Jesus through worship, fellowship, and service.
Join us for the official launch of Women's Guild 2021 this Sunday, the 30th of May, led by the director of PCA Women's Guild, Reverend Elizabeth Kimani. The launch service will be officiated by the moderator of the 23rd General Assembly, Right Reverend Patrick Thegumutahi, from 8 p.m. live on CAC TV. The service will reflect on the theme, You Are My Witness, from the book of Isaiah 43:10. Let's celebrate our Women's Guild Week by being God's witnesses.
God bless you as you prepare to participate in this week's Guild activities.
We welcome your feedback on our programming. For questions or comments, kindly get in touch with us on email info@caktv.org, SMS us on 22167 or call us on 0794 588 054.
Welcome back, and many thanks for tuning in to this special edition where as a country we are interacting with Mother Africa. We've taken our time to look into what is happening in the African continent, because as historians, as these consultants are telling us tonight, that initially Africa was one country before the scrambling and partition that came about as a result of colonialism. That is why sometimes when you go to Uganda, you'll find a community that is found in Kenya is living there. But when you ask them, they tell you that they were one community before the partition took place those years. What happens in those countries affects Kenya in one way or another. And that's why tonight we are helping us to understand indeed how do they affect us, and how can we harmonize our operations to ensure that we get the best positive results ever. Mr. Samoy and Mr. Irungu Goko, we had actually walked around East Africa just to do an in-house keeping, and you've done a very great job. Now we take another plane. I don't know where we, but I think we were somewhere in Dar es Salaam, somewhere in Kampala. Let's now go to the western part of Africa. That is Mali. We saw what happened last year in August when the coup happened. There are those who are given that privilege to midwife the transition for 18 months. Yeah. But few days ago, or that was on Monday, something happened in the morning when they tried to do a reshuffle, and then they left out 2 key appointments from the military, and then everything went south. And even as we speak tonight, Mr. Mokhtar and also Bandao, that is the interim president, have been forced to resign. Yeah. So in Mali, when you go to Nigeria, when you go to Cameroon, when you go to Togo, you see there is a lot of skirmishes taking place every now and then, every now and then, every now and then. But political analysts will always say that nothing happens in a vacuum under the sun, especially conflicts. Conflicts, it is said that it usually has origins, or the perpetrators, either silently or noisily. So we begin from you, Mr. Irungu Goko, to try and help us to understand where did the rain start beating the western part of Africa.
Thanks a lot, Cornelius. Let's look at, when you look at Scrabble for Africa, and when the foreigners came, there's one mistake that they did that will eat us for some time. Mm-hmm. When they were doing the demarcations, when you look at the, like now we are talking in West Africa, when you look at the demarcations, they ignored the ethnography mapping, and they went for what we call geographical mapping based on resources. Mm-hmm. When you look at the East Africa map, when you look at the West Africa, when you look at the Cameroonians, why they are fighting today, because part of this British colony that was English-speaking was merged with a French-speaking colony to form Cameroon. Mm-hmm. So you come, you bring people, you transform them to follow your culture, the British culture. They have their own traditional culture. Then you indoctrinate a British culture. Their brothers on the other side have a French culture. Then they are told, because this side of British culture has minerals and this side of French cultures have no minerals, for us to survive, we need to combine these into one. When you look at Nigeria, it's the same thing. The oil rich versus the famine rich. When you go to Mali, it's the same thing. The mineral rich side versus the other side. So that is aspect number one. Aspect number two is what now you're calling the cultural boundaries. Like you said, you'll find a Maasai in Tanzania and a Maasai in Kenya. So when government separates them and imposes restrictions that you cannot do this and here, when you tell me that when you look at, let's even go international, North Korea and South Korea, do you remember that wall? Do you remember the German-Bahrain wall? So the mindset of the European that they brought to Africa, that we can separate you as human beings as long as our minerals are united. That fight, Mali, number two, that is number two. Number three, the foreign interest, like you said, is very loud. Francophone countries are always in war because France to today imposes taxes on foreign countries. So Africa countries that were colonized by French are still paying taxes. Like we pay to KRA in Kenya. They're still paying taxes in there. And that is number one. Number two, Central African Republic. If you look at the UN report, they have even blacklisted Diamond from Central Africa because Central African Republic is the second poorest country in Africa after Nigeria. Yet it is the richest country in Africa in terms of mineral. The other day, now look at how things are evolving. Russia has stepped in West Africa. China has stepped in. France is there. UN, who is UN? UN is G8. So who are the G8? They are the same people. So out of the 8, 4 are already on the ground. China, Russia, France, and UK. So America could be there using a proxy. So when Russia takes in and say in Central African Republic we trained, we were able to stabilize. I'm forgetting this country in Europe. We were able to stabilize this country. Now we are using the same way to come. We are training the Central African army to fight. But who are they fighting? They are fighting a former minister who has a militia. When you look at a human being, they are able to assimilate their behaviors based on their upbringing. When a country fights for 40 years, that means the person who was born 40 years ago was born in a country that was fighting and is today a fighter. They know nothing else apart from fighting. The political aspect of it, and our brother here will tell us in the security sector, is high time police stopped being minor to the army. Because the concept of army taking over and police stepping aside is what is causing so much of this. Because and you see, army enjoys some semi-autonomous sovereignty power that is hidden within the constitution. So when a president sits, they are able to form an army. Look at all those presidents who have been there for 20, 15, 30, 40 years. He'll confirm that. They have their relatives in the army. And you see, the army discipline is, a general is a general and you take orders from the general. So when you look at all these people, they have their brothers, their sons, they're in the army. Even in Mali today, what is happening? It's the army controlling the government. Can we think as Africa, what can we do internally in the military, in the security aspect? He will advise us further. In the security aspect, what can we do to make sure that the army has no power to take over government and nobody does anything? The police step aside and they let now the army control, as in like in short, they keep saying once the army take over, askari anakuwa raia. But these guys are trained person. So what do you expect him to do? He'll join the militia. So what are we doing? Can we can we do something about it?
You have actually brought out something very sensitive. I'm inviting Mr. Samoei briefly to say that, or to give a way forward when it comes to security. But remember, that's not our worst problem. Our worst problem that you mentioned out, one, was a scramble and partition, which led to a seed of discord being planted among the people, that even after the colonialists have left, conflicts keeps on arising every now and then internally by the people themselves, and secondly, others that is being propagated from outside. You've mentioned about the big four hands, which is actually evident in these, which from how you've been showing the chronology of how they've been coming in, probably all the 8 of them could be coming there. Finally. But again, Mr. Samoei, what Mr. Irungu Goko has brought out is a bit scary, because it seems these people in the western part of Africa are confronting a very powerful force, which indeed requires a very sober approach from very sober individuals and not selfish people to lead them into there. Before you give us the issue of how the army works with the police when crisis comes about, indeed, what do you think could be the roadmap to save such a situation?
Thank you. Even before I talk about the roadmap, let me just confirm to us this evening and our viewers that the ghosts of colonialism never departed Africa. Yeah? I'm saying this because the West African states, as he has mentioned, was actually colonized by predominantly the French colonials, and part of it was also colonized by the British. Indeed, because of that scramble of Africa that was witnessed in 1808, yes, around that time. And most of the Western countries were actually looking at resources, nothing else. What do we gain from this colony? What does this colony produce? Is it good in farming, the way they came into Kenya and colonized us? Because we were good, our soil is good in terms of agriculture and coffee farming, yeah, and even dairy farming. So with the West African states, I would say that after the colonials left, there is still a hand that is left behind. As I say, the ghosts are still present here in Africa. And what we are saying is that where would really expect that these people sell their firearms? Because they manufacture firearms, yeah? Like France, they do manufacture firearms. The British, they do manufacture firearms. And China, okay, being the new entrant now that is actually colonizing from the economic point of view, that is now becoming, say, a threat to the big boys. And therefore, as he has given us the chronology of these issues, I would not want to mention, but most of the West African countries have actually gone through phases of conflict, right from Sierra Leone, Liberia, Mali now, and it's something that appears to be continuous. And it's just one phenomenon that we are seeing here, where it is following the same trajectory of military coups. Yeah. Why? It's because most of these countries have not embraced and strengthened their democracy, including strengthening institutions such as electoral commissions, electoral bodies, so that they carry out elections which are of integrity, credible elections. So the problem is there's this general feeling that maybe the opposition, maybe their vote was stolen by the sitting government because they have they are using the government machinery, which includes the military, to suppress the opposition. And therefore, this is a phenomenon that requires much attention. In fact, this issue now of these other players, the big boys, is something that probably may not be leaving us anytime soon, because for those obvious reasons which I've mentioned, and some of them have actually strategic positions, military positions here in Africa, what they call the African Command and those kind of things. It's because they have vested interests. A good example is Somalia, where there was heavy deployment of the United Nations and the American troops way back in 1991 during Siad Barre, that time. And Americans and those other states that had sent troops to Somalia were not able to manage that conflict in Somalia. Why? Yet America has all the equipment, all the military assets. Talk of the radars and the heavy artillery and the aircraft and manned drones and all those kinds of technology. America had all that at their disposal, but they were not able to manage that conflict. That also goes all the way into Central African Republic, right? Where we are seeing, civil uprisings, people not getting to understand each other. Yet they are the same community. These are Africans, yeah? But who is fueling the war? But even the Americans and the big boys are not able to manage that kind of conflict. Yet they have all the tools and the machinery at their disposal. So we are saying these are actually the perpetrators. Yeah? The West, talk of the East, Africa, basically, for lack of any better word, is a playing field or a battlefield where these people actually instigate conflict so that they are able, to sell their policy in terms of humanitarian assistance, in terms of giving aid, to assist, maybe rebuild the infrastructure and the economy of these countries that have suffered conflict.
Thank you, Mr. Samoei. Now, before we go to the southern part of Africa due to time, Mr. Irungu raised a very important thing, that here comes a situation where the military says, we've taken over. And here we have another person who has undergone also training on how to handle guns and other complicated weapons and matters to do with the intelligence, how also to fight. Amambiwa kwamba ni raia. How do we help such a situation also in future? Because if it's happening in Mali, if it happened in Cote d'Ivoire, if it is happening in the Central African Republic, this thing can happen any other place, let me not mention, but any other country can follow suit. How can this be harmonized in the security part, which you are an expert in it, to ensure that hata wakati kimeumana, the army has said this, the entire security system is in tandem. Not this one is saying this, we anasema acha tuingie msituni.
As I said, the issue here is interest, vested interests from these big nations, like the Americans, the British, the French, and China. Yeah, they have vested interest in these countries. If they really wanted to end conflict in the world, it is something that is possible. It can be done. That's why in areas where they have vested interests, for example, even here in Kenya, when we had the post-election violence way back in 2007, including 2017 thereabout, where there was some misunderstanding. And we could see the big players now coming, In fact, the response was very fast, because they didn't want Kenya to degenerate into a civil war, where, and of course we have the United Nations, UNEP headquarters here. So it's a strategic hub for most of these countries. So what I'm saying is, in as much as we want to end conflict, and the United Nations, was actually constituted to deal with global peace and security issues, that they are able to respond as fast as possible so that it does not degenerate into atrocities and crimes against humanity and those kinds of serious crimes. So that's why you will see that the United Nations, through ad hoc meetings of the Security Council, calling meetings so that they are able to dispatch troops to those areas to suppress any form of conflict as quickly as possible. But now this one that is protracted within the West African states is that these people have interests actually to tap the resources, because West Africa has minerals. For example, Nigeria, we have huge oil deposits, and the Central African Republic, we have huge deposits of minerals, Talk of Mali, I'm sure there is something good that these people are minerals, and that's why France is really guarding Mali, because this was their colony and their hands are still actually on Mali. So all the conflict, the feud that you see around, as I said, some hand is still behind.
Thank you very much, Mr. Samoei. Now let's take another plane to South Africa. This is one country that you cannot mention Africa and then forget to mention South Africa. It's a country with a strategic importance to this continent, bearing in mind that it has one of the best hospitals. Around 8 top universities in Africa are found in South Africa and everything. But still at the same time, there are so many cries that comes from that country. I've taken my time to follow this debate, the land question in South Africa, especially that is being propagated, advocated by the economic freedom fighters led by Julius Malema. They're talking of land expropriation without compensation, nationalization of mines and banks. Those are the things that these people have been mentioning every now and then. And those who are talking of which land do Malema wants to be expropriated without compensation, because the Mzungu says we are here, land was provided by God, by nature, we found ourselves here, maybe even if you are pushed away, that is all about nature. This debate is here for a long time, and Mr. Irungu, you will give us the background of this story about the land expropriation in South Africa and this feud. And then finally we shall come to Mr. Samoei, who will help us to understand how can we harmonize between the ANC government and these other dissenting voices on this matter, because in as much as maybe it could not be having any other external influence, what is happening in South Africa is a projection that there could be further conflict in regard to land question.
Wow, thanks a lot, Cornelius. Let's say the history of land in South Africa is what the colonialists would have wished to do all over Africa. 1913, they made their own laws in South Africa. The colonialists made a law. You see the way the British used to make the laws in East and Central Africa, for Eastern Africa, British protectorate. They made a law that's called the Native Land Act of 1913, that no black South African should own land beyond 7%. So the entire South Africa, which is around 100 and something million hectares, only 7% was allowed to be inhabited by the natives blacks. So it means these people were pushed into villages for settlement. Then somewhere on the way, they enacted it to 13%. So by the time the ANC were fighting for freedom, they were fighting to get their land back. But now, when the negotiation for democracy came, they were told this issue about lands. It was allowed that sometimes in 1992, somewhere therein, the law was reviewed to mean that now anyone can own land. But which land was that? By then, 90% of the land in South Africa was registered under individuals who are the whites, companies owned by whites, and now trustees, which were now small communities. If you look at it today, EFF is saying, yes, this land is ours, historically, and you have owned it and registered it. So you have a legal document owning 100,000 acres, but you have no historical ownership of it. And And today, like you're saying, that's what Mugabe did in Zimbabwe. That's why he was loved by his people. He told them, we are not negotiating about our land. You give us our land first, then we negotiate about partnership. Now, today, ANC, which I call, which I blame as a perpetrator of what now what we call intra-Africa colonization, whereby Africans are colonizing each other within their own country. Within their own country. So ANC does not want to lose the economic value of this land, but they also do not want to lose the land that is not under any economic activity. So that's why EFF is saying that we cannot compensate you for land because you own a title deed. We can only compensate you for land that you have developed and government wants to invest in it. Once ANC, South Africa is a rich country, is a globally rich country. I think one of the richest in Africa, if not the richest, it should be second of that. It has a very strong military, it has a very strong currency, but that is now what we were talking about, the future of colonization, which was economic. So the people in South Africa are poor, but the services are good, the economy is good, but the individuals are poor. So EFF is saying we do not want to have a rich country with poor citizens. And the sooner ANC accepts that, the better. Because the next course of action, if now EFF doesn't win it through the parliament, then its people might choose to go the other way.
Many thanks, Mr. Irungu. I think in summary, Mr. Samoei, as a security and a peace person, just give us a brief harmonization. How can these voices be brought together? This is the whites, the rich landowners, the ANC party, and also the EFF, to ensure that at the end of it, they reach a common ground without bloodshed, and at the end of it, South Africa remains to be a stable country, as it has been, and in that trajectory.
Thank you. I'll be so brief, in the sense that South Africa actually got her independence much later as compared to the other African countries. And for that reason, the colonizers actually invested so much in South Africa until that time that South Africa got her independence in the 90s. So looking at that, the colonials actually had established or have established themselves economically in terms of even the industries and the factories and the property. Most of the property in South Africa is still predominantly owned by the white people, yeah, and especially the land question, which is normally extremely emotive, especially in Africa. Land is a sensitive issue, and all that this EFF movement is saying through their parliament is that, look, we are now out of the colonial yoke and we need our land back. Now, but the question, which is now a catch-22 situation, in as much as the ANC had promised that there will be a returning of this land by certain percentages, that by a certain year, we will have gotten up to 30% of that piece of land that is owned by the white settlers. That has not happened because the late Nelson Mandela himself actually promised that post-independence, by the year 2000, I think 2002, they were projecting that 30% of that land will have been taken back and given
to the people,
who happen to be extremely poor and pushed into those informal settlements of Soweto and KwaZulu Natal, those areas, yeah, and they are living in deplorable conditions. So it still sounds a mystery that yes, these people got their independence, but they are not able to enjoy the fruits of that independence. And the reason why this group, the EFF, is actually fighting hard that these laws are reviewed, because even the successive presidents, Thabo Mbeki and the rest, were not able to implement what Nelson Mandela had promised. So that is where the issue is. And there's the general feeling from the majority black people that these people are collaborating, like the leaders are collaborating with the white people to continue to oppress them. Because even the presidents themselves, you saw the other day the former president being charged, Zuma, on allegations of corruption. And we really want to believe that probably he was involved in those corrupt activities. That's why he was not able to implement. And I think at some point, that's why he was thrown out of power, because of such promises that the founding father Nelson Mandela had promised, but Jacob Zuma was not able to carry along those kind of promises. So there was disquiet among the youth, and predominantly the black people who are so poor and living in those deplorable conditions. And for that reason, what we are seeing today is, I mean, it's a replica of probably what happened here in Kenya, in the Laikipia ranches, where we saw the Maasai, the Samburu community trying to invade those ranches to graze their livestock because they felt that, look, we have so much of this livestock, the herd, but we don't have enough grazing land. Yet we have a white person who is owning 5,000, 10,000, you know, running all the way from Nyeri to Nanyuki through Solio Ranch and those areas. Yeah, so there is normally that disquiet.
As we wind up,
and the government actually now had to use security forces to suppress the Maasai herders who had actually crossed into those ranches. Unfortunately, it's something that we need to continue discussing about. It's something that we should not wish away, because it is a fact that the population growth demands that then we need more space so that we settle our people. Thank you.
Many thanks. That is Mr. Philemon Samoei, who is a peace and a safety and security consultant, and who has been joined by Mr. Irungu Goko, who is a public and a policy consultant. These are gentlemen armed with information across the continent, not only across the continent, but across the globe. Time has caught up with us, but at least we've had an opportunity to give you a glimpse, a picture of what is happening in the African continent on the social, political sphere of life.